out of the gate, because there's definitely that crowd out there that says, F this game.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with it. Which camera are we on, Leo? I need to have a message for these people.
Okay.
I get it. Joe, you can join me whenever you want.
Okay.
We understand that Kojima isn't involved with this game. I
Mhm.
understand for some people that means F this, F the game. I want nothing to do with it. And that's fine. You can do whatever you want.
Mhm.
But we need to cover games. We're not apologists. We're not kissing up to Konami's ass. We're analysts. We want to talk about a game that is on the shelves that's fascinating. We're not spitting on Kojima's grave by
And if
doing
it makes you feel any better, I will not have very nice things to say about it.
All right, so Serial, you're reviewing this thing.
Yeah, I mean,
How-
just to start off, like F this game. Yeah, it's a mess.
Oh, as reviews editor, I also want to point out, Suri is still in the process of reviewing this
Sure.
game, so opinions are not final.
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
I've been playing. I played it since it came out, basically since they didn't give us any access to the game pre-launch. So I've been playing it with random people and just mostly single player, because the weird thing, they sold it strangely on several counts. So
Yeah.
I think early on they showed it off with nothing but co-op.
Yeah.
And then only now, I think 1 or 2 months ago, they started sort of showing you, here's the single player.
I think they said, like, there's going to be a single player mode,
Yeah.
but you never know
Yeah.
if that's like a Titanfall situation or what.
Yeah, so it always felt like a throwaway part of the game, but having played it, for about a day, that feels like that is the main crux of the game.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's so weird, the disconnect between how this game was presented as this big, like, hey, it's a co-op survival experience,
Right.
versus the reality of the game, which is like, if you want to do co-op survival stuff, you can, like, yeah, I guess that's a separate mode you can go do, but like the game really
Yeah.
presents itself as this like single player survival
To the
experience.
point
Yeah.
that you had to look up, like, online, like, how do I even play co-op?
Yeah.
Like, where is this
Yeah.
buried? It's like, okay, it's in the menu on
You
the
have to
home
go talk
base.
to this robot thing, and he'll take
That
you
is-
to purgatory.
That's so weird.
I know,
because
yeah.
like I played a preview version of Metal Gear Survive like a year ago or something. I think at Gamescom, and that they were just like, yeah, here's some like co-op mode to play, and that they didn't like. It was like briefly mentioned that there would probably be a single player thing that they were still working on that would like come to the game.
It's
And they're
huge.
just like, and they were just like, no, like this is the co-op. Blah, blah, blah. Like it was so focused
Yeah,
on
but-
that section.
And that's the other thing that's funny about it, is that like it is, so they spend so much time presenting it as co-op, and then you have to play the game for probably a good 2 to 3 hours before like the meat of the co-op stuff is even like available to you.
yeah.
Yeah,
And-
before the tutorials end. And
Yeah.
that's the thing, is like, there's so much speculation and emotions for this game, and even starting it out, it was a real roller coaster ride of emotions for me. And then where I got to, I'm only like a couple hours in, maybe like 4 or 5 hours. I just realized, like, okay, this is just a quirky Japanese survival game.
Yeah.
Like, that is how I need to reframe all this. After wild speculation about what this thing could be, it's like, oh, it's just a survival game. Okay, it's not the end of the
Yeah.
world, everybody.
But the other thing is like it's not a great survival game. Or it's like, I feel like some of the balance is, and I don't want to like taint Suriel's view on
He's
this
not listening, it's
necessarily,
okay.
but feel free to disagree with me on this front, Suriel. But it's like, I think what bothers me about it the most is the fact that there's a loop that I can see that would be entertaining,
Yes,
right?
yes.
About like going out and gathering materials and scavenging and killing stuff. And like, I like base building and stuff in games. That could be so fun. And it is so hard to engage with that just because of how like oppressive the hunger and thirst mechanics are in this.
It is like managing the world's worst phone battery. It is so it is just constantly ticking down, and I get part of it is that the game's day cycles are accelerated, right? So it's like whatever 15 45 days or 54 minutes for a day.
Okay.
So I guess if you eat 3 times a day, that sort of makes sense, but
Come on, games, you don't got to do that.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's fun or interesting, because I feel like, despite sort of the situation, which is you are someone from the Big Boss's company, Militaire Sans Frontiers, which, by the way, I named myself Bigger Boss.
I named myself Little Boss.
I named myself Snack instead of Snake.
Okay, Joe, you lose.
A solid snack.
Which is what you'll need frequently in this game.
Exactly. So you as the main character are sucked into this wormhole into another land called Dite, which is seems to resemble Pakistan around the time that Metal Gear Solid 5.
Needn't say more. We
Yeah.
understand the premise. You're sucked into a wormhole in an alternate version of Earth in the Metal Gear universe
Exactly.
called Dite. We get it.
It's in the wiki, guys. Read up. So you get transplanted, and the whole idea is you're here to find the crew that has been sort of abandoned here, and also find this very important information. But the idea is like, I don't know I don't know if I'm gonna get out alive. But my main concern has not been like, am I gonna survive? It's more like I need to find some freaking sheep to kill. Like it is the most mundane thing that you could be worried about, and yet like there are these areas where you go in and you need a gas mask. And so those tick down your oxygen meter, and that is another resource to manage. And you would think that to me seems like a mechanic more worthy of attention. Of just I don't know if I'm going to have the oxygen to survive. Like that.
Yeah.
That seems like an interesting mechanic to have to manage. Whereas I don't like the idea of I constantly need to be worrying about where is my next meal going to come from, which I think is a crux of survival games. But here it just feels like that is literally the only thing that I am worried about constantly.
It's so fascinating to see this game and be like, oh, there are some ideas here which I thought were going to be implemented more into Snake Eater. And it's so bizarre to be like, oh, you're actually having to survive out in the wilderness, and we put it front and center in this game. Like there are meters hovering over your character as you're running around. You know,
like oxygen, thirst, hunger, and then like there's basically your Wi-Fi signal when you go into the dust areas because they don't.
Yeah,
you have a mini map. Well, I don't know if you actually have a mini map, but you have like information on screen, and when you go into those areas, it basically obscures your objective marker, so you can't see anything, which is kind of cool because then you have to sort of read lights and sort of like, okay, if
it kind of does, but then when you get close to something, then the objective pops up again. It's
so
like,
it's a weird thing, but like I think conceptually, I like the idea of having to guide yourself by the nearest light that's nearby, but they don't necessarily execute on that. But that's an interesting thing, right? Whereas the idea of like, well, I forgot to, kill a sheep or something, or I didn't pick up gerbils that were running along the ground, so now I'm completely screwed. Like, that doesn't seem like an interesting part of the game to have to manage as much as you do. Like, there's a certain amount of it where it's like, that'd be fine if every once in a while I had to go out and kill a sheep or something, just for terms of pacing. But the idea that you have to do it almost you do basically one excursion, and you basically have to go out and scrounge
just
for like an
desperately
hour.
sprinting around looking for a sheep to punch.
Boy,
Because that has been my main hunting method, is just instead of sneaking up and like stabbing them, I'll just run full force and just clock them.
The bionic arm, basically.
Yeah, basically clock them. And so
Does it at least like get a little easier as you progress?
I've gotten to the point where I've sort of crossed the line between like I am just living off my next single resource to now I have a potato farm, I have a corn farm set up in my
Potato farming in Metal Gear.
and I have like
potato farm.
I have like the level 3 sort of cooking arrangement station where you can smoke meat and have that enhance the amount of hunger that heals. But it still feels like it's still in the back of my head of just, okay, at some point I'm going to have to stop what I'm doing and go do this other thing. And that's the other thing that it feels sort of bisected, because in something like Don't Starve, the whole survival aspect is kind of the whole deal. Yeah. Whereas here is you have the single player campaign that is stopgapped by the survival aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
So something bizarre that you found out, or seems to be part of your strategy at this point, is going into co-op missions will replenish your food and water meters?
It's inconsistent so far. So like the first time I did it, I was super low on resources. And when I finished the mission, I was just completely healed up 100%. So I was like, oh, I guess maybe this is just a way to heal up. But it doesn't seem consistent. I think Joe has found out like a more consistent thing is if you're below 25% on hunger and thirst, if you just go into that white space purgatory and then come back out, you'll be healed up to 25%.
And like what? Like your ceiling is bumped up to 25%, but your meters also still heal up beyond that.
What hunger and thirst do is they basically cap your max health. But if you already have over that amount, it won't sort of deplete. It'll just, once you deplete it, it won't replenish. So if you're under that cap, it'll heal slowly. But
anyway, having to find those workarounds though is like super annoying.
It's not
bizarre.
Yeah.
So what about like the overall progression? Because I'm kind of in the same camp as Joe, where I like a lot of this stuff in theory, and I'm just wondering if it's going to fall into a groove of progression that's going to feel satisfying for like building out my base, understanding the dynamics. Have you gotten to a point where you feel like you understand the loop pretty well?
I think there are still parts of it where I feel like I'm right now, it keeps telling me that I'm bleeding medical resources and I'm not sure what to do about it. Because right now I have workers in my base. I have like 1 or 2 workers in my
Oh, that's
base.
cool. Okay.
And you sort of do the Metal Gear Solid 5 of like, okay, you're assigning people to teams.
Oh.
And so like, here's the medical team. But I basically only
Joe,
have like,
you're into this.
I
You're
am,
into it.
Of course I am, but I've played this game for probably 5 or 6 hours now, maybe.
Yeah, and it's-
like, and I'm not anywhere close to that. So
Yeah.
like,
yeah, it seems like it wants to be every kind of game at the same time of just like, here's a single player, like slightly narrative
Sounds very
experience.
disorienting.
Here's a sim
Yeah.
kind of game. Here's this online co-op thing, but it doesn't never. It so far it hasn't seemed to manage those, like the interplay between those aspects super well. But yeah, I am at a point where it's like I'm concerned about food, but I'm not super in dire need. And so as you expand the map, you get more and more areas where it's like, okay, this is going to be a more like a not regular, but a food source that I can sort of check in every once in a while, and there'll be sheep to punch or whatever.
Thank God.
and not that I imagine that there are a ton of defenders out there for this, but I mean, to be clear, it isn't the fact that this game has hunger and thirst meters that's the
Right,
problem.
right,
I mean, like that's a staple of this kind of game. It's just their implementation is just particularly restrictive.
Right.
But I mean, on the flip side, we are in the early hours of the game.
Yeah,
And like if it
we-
keeps going
we
the
are.
direction Serial's going, that's kind of cool.
But then it's a pacing problem that you should not make people have to play as long as it seems like you have to play before you feel like some of that pressure is
Yeah.
being lifted.
Right.
The other
Yeah.
thing is that
Issue.
I mentioned this to Joe earlier, but it feels like in a lot of survival games, eventually you find, or games like this tough, right? You find ways to sort of circumvent some of the earlier problems in the game. So like as you progress, you feel like, oh, I have to do this, but I have a bigger oxygen tank or something. I have ways to get food, or I have pouches that'll like feed me or something. But here it just feels like I am still at the point where I have to make regular stops to refuel. I just happen to have more resources. There's no like, you have an expanded stomach or whatever they would justify having to say,
Nano machines.
or like, I've introduced fiber into my diet, or whatever they would do to stave off hunger for longer.
Right.
And like, I haven't upgraded my oxygen tank, so it's not like I can delve further into the expanses,
Yeah.
into the dust. I just have more points in which I can warp. So it never feels like you are getting more powerful. It just feels like you have more stuff.
What about the actual co-op missions? If people are like, maybe they got into the multiplayer of Metal Gear Solid 5, I don't know who those people are, but they're probably out there, and
Yeah.
they want more like co-op focus with Metal Gear
Yeah.
Solid mechanics. Like, is that interesting?
I think that a lot of people were sort of, I mean, just the premise of this game, I think, is offensive to a lot of people for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But I think when they introduced it as here's this co-op experience, I was actually like, I had zero expectations in terms of this is going to be in any way a Metal Gear game. So I think a lot of people are reading it like they seem to just now be coming around to the conclusion that's, oh, this isn't a Metal Gear game at all. But I feel like that's where I started, of just like, I have zero expectations of this being a Metal Gear game.
Yeah.
So just the idea of like, I get to play around with Metal Gear Solid 5's gameplay in a co-op setting with wave-based survival, that actually sounds kind of cool. So far, I have only played 2 co-op missions, and it feels like until this morning, I'd only played 1.
And you're not talking about one round. It's just there's like a set thing, like
There's
this arena,
one-
this space,
right.
this scenario.
So the first mission is just you go into this. You start off in one area, and you go and scrounge for resources for about a minute and a half or something, and then you set up camp to build defenses and stuff against 3 waves of zombies.
Fortniting around, yeah.
Right, basically. But like there are just issues there where Joe Reeves and I tried to hop into a match, and all the enemies were level 20. So the only way we could really feasibly kill them was to like sneak up behind them and stab them in the back. Whereas now I'm level 20, and so I'm building up defenses and just shooting them with my bow through fences and stuff. So now it seems more manageable. But the idea that the level at which you unlock them seems completely out of sync with when you should actually start playing co-op.
They want you to play single player for a hell of a long time.
Yeah.
Before, like, even though you can technically access the co-op, like 2 hours in or whatever,
Yeah.
you don't actually want to play it until you're like level 12 or 15. Because the only time I ever did well was when I was being carried by people who were way stronger than me early on. And it just seems like it feels like they should have had at least one mission early on that's like, here's a sample co-op mission for people,
Yeah.
so you can
Right.
you can want to do this, but it doesn't
Yeah.
seem like it's there
'Cause
either.
I tried playing with you last night, and you had to revive me so frequently. And then I
Yeah.
just kept yelling, rock and roll, which is a cool little
Yeah,
voice
you had
chat
a
you
lot-
can just
you
spam,
have a
which is
lot of
very funny
rewards.
as I'm going down again and again.
There is that co-op fun of just like, okay, I know this wave is going to be over because like when the wave is over, even if there are zombies, the digger thing you're trying to defend will explode.
The hell digger explodes. We
Yeah.
get it, Zuriel.
And so like knowing that you're going to win the round, I'll just salute for like the last 5 seconds of the round, and then everything will just explode around me. So it's like
It's pretty sweet.
yeah, that part is fun. But to be fair, Hanson, we did get an S rank on that mission. We did it as well
If
on
that's
that
an
mission.
S rank,
Hey.
I don't know how this game works.
That actually brings up a good point. So you got an S rank. What
Right.
fantastic rewards did you get?
Resources, a bunch of resources.
So there's not even that element of like oh, here's like a cool
Yes.
gun
Right.
or something
Because
like
it's
that.
like yeah, so basically all you get is just more random drops, more resources. Because the way they gate you is that as you progress through the single player campaign, you unlock more things, and you can also find them out in the field of just here's a recipe for a shotgun or whatever.
Yeah.
So that is the thing that you unlock. But if you want to, okay, here's a really hard mission, I'm going to play it. Like it's not going to be, I'm doing this for this specific reward. I'm doing it just to amass more resources to take back into my single player. So even when we did really well, I'm just like, all right, well, I guess I have more screws and aluminum. That's cool. I guess.
But Zuriel, you got those materials from cardboard boxes falling out of the sky, and you open them
That's
up, which
true.
is pretty sweet.
That's true. It's also really weird because I showed Hanson this, but at the beginning of that mission, there's a chest to your immediate left, and I told Hanson that basically if you open this chest, you're screwed because someone is going as you're playing the lockpicking mini game to open it. As soon as you open it, if there's a person right next to you, they can grab those supplies before you can.
You go through all the effort to unlock this, and someone else is like, zoinks!
Right.
Because
my
you're stuck in this
God.
interface.
Right. So I it's hard to know how the co-op works exactly, but I think those go into a shared pool. But you get points for amassing, like for collecting things, and at the end, the person with the highest score gets more stuff.
Yeah.
So you basically lose out on those points that could have gotten you the win by investing in the lockpicking mini game. So it just seems like it is at times sort of weirdly conflicting in terms of how individualistic it wants to be versus
Yeah.
how cooperative it wants to be.
Mhm.
So it just feels, again, it feels kind of like a mess that I'm not sure what the direction here is.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, speaking of direction, I mean, we can talk a little bit about Kojima not being involved with this game. He's only had one quote, I think, on the record about it where he said, it needs mechs in it.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, cool feedback, dude.
it does have the walkers.
Yeah, I found a walker
It does.
here,
And
yeah.
there was a trailer. I won't spoil it because it felt like a spoilery trailer. But there was one trailer where they showed something super duper Metal Gear, which doesn't work in this timeline at all. And I'm very curious how they explain its existence back in this time
Whatever.
frame.
It's about a like super dimensional travel or whatever.
Oh, okay. Talk about the coward's way out. Did you guys see this in the beginning? This opening cutscene, which is surprisingly long, surprisingly beefy. It sets it up and says it's a pseudo-historical story.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Just pick a lane. As a Metal Gear fan, I don't know how to take this.
Metal
now.
Gear is a pseudo-historical story.
Well, at least they don't ever set up a Metal Gear game saying like, maybe this happened. You tell us. Like, no, I want to know if this is canon or not. And I love if I could have any footage in the world right now. Forget dinosaurs. Forget anything. I just want footage of the meeting that probably happened in Kojima Productions, where at some point in Phantom Pain's development, someone asked Kojima, "Could we have like I don't know, wormhole guns for the Fulton?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And then just that one item in Phantom Pain now being blown out into the most batshit scenario.
Or maybe they were just
imaginable.
trying to subvert him from there. It's like, can we have a wormhole thing? It's like, yeah, sure. We got it. All right, let's go make this whole game.
So let me tell you that, like, as a huge fan of this series,
Yeah.
I was super turned off by the beginning of this game.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
was intrigued, but go on.
Because it's like Metal Gear always has some does go in some kooky directions sometimes,
Yeah.
right? Acknowledged. But the way that I feel like historically the game sort of builds a foundation before it goes in those weird places. Or like it spends time building atmosphere and tone in a way that when something like Psycho Mantis shows up, you're kind of like, huh, okay.
Yeah.
And like this game is just takes the most artless approach to introducing all of this like stupid crap that's happening. It dumps everything on you immediately.
Well, it opens
And
with
just, I guess, for me, it's ultimately just like the way this game is bending over backwards, trying to be like, look, we're part of the Metal Gear universe, everyone. No, it's really, this is Metal Gear.
this is pseudo historically accurate to Metal Gear.
Yeah, it's like, no, it's Metal Gear Survive. This is part of the Metal Gear universe. It's just like, it just feels like so divorced from like what anyone wants from Metal Gear.
It was a messy divorce. There is funny like metaphors you can read into if you want to be a nerd about this stuff. Like there's a discussion early on when they're explaining D-Tay and the existence of this hell dimension. They call it hell so many times.
Yeah.
But they're talking about it, and there's two characters kind of arguing about its existence. And the argument is like, there's no basis for that in reality. And then literally the other character is like, there is a basis. This is scientifically accurate. It makes sense. Like, please accept this, Metal Gear fans.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I mean is that like it feels very weird to me the way the game like is trying to justify itself to an audience that just doesn't care or want it to.
Yeah,
you know,
Really? I feel like
Yeah.
there's two separate audiences, right? Like one that it does not care about Metal Gear at all, and they just want a fun, game to play, whether it's survival or whether they went into it with the expectations of co-op. And then there's like Metal Gear fans. I think them sort of posturing in terms of like this is a big important part of Metal Gear history.
I don't think they are, though.
But I feel like the length and meatiness of that opening cutscene makes you think about like this is going to be a game that it ends up not being, of just like here's a
That's
very
true.
heavily cinematic game that is going to have story, but then like
Big Boss is in it, for Christ's sake.
right for one
Getting on a helicopter.
Yeah,
and
stop
leaving.
saying that.
for 1
He
second.
is. He
No,
is.
I know, but I mean,
Uh,
I don't think the intro positions itself as saying this is like an important Metal Gear game. It just tries really hard to like
Establish its connection.
exactly,
Right, yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Which is helpful to know
Right.
the timeline and stuff like that. And if you want to be a metaphorical nerd again, like the scene opens with Big Boss leaving, and then the soldiers left behind, Kojima Productions, saying, "Boss, don't go! All right, now we're stranded. We have to make of this what we can." It's an
Sounds like
interesting.
they're just trying way too hard.
and for the
Yeah.
the people who just
get
want
it.
like a co-op game, all of this setup just feels like I'm just gonna button through this because none of it. It's not like in and of itself, like aside from the Metal Gear universe or narrative, it doesn't seem like it's interesting enough on its own.
I don't know. I think Reeve is a pretty fascinating character.
Oh, Ben
And
Reeve.
There's also a part of me, and this is divorced from like the game proper, but like I am just so mad that this game exists, but we do not have like the game that Metal Gear Solid 5 like almost was. You know, like
What do you
we get Metal Gear Survive instead of Metal Gear 5 Special Edition that has like that final mission that they teased in that featurette, and like that has that giant tank that you spend the whole game assembling and then ultimately just barely does anything.
But would you want that without
It was-
Kojima there?
Yeah.
Really? You'd want them to tell that focus?
I
on
mean,
the
it's
story?
not like it's gonna make people any less angry
What?
than a game called Metal Gear Survive. Basically,
I think it would. I feel like on the
See, for
in the
me-
realm of territory, this is like a 2 out of 10 on how offensive a new Metal Gear game could be. It's so weird and detached. It feels like Revengeance to me. It's like whatever.
Yeah, I guess my argument here is that like Metal Gear Solid 5 is still directed by Kojima, right? For the most part, I don't think if you implement a scene that they already designed and storyboarded and just like make that
Interesting.
scene into a game, like I don't think that that's some huge affront.
It's like a Ground Zeroes type scope, even just of that crazy island thing.
I'm just saying a special like re-release Metal Gear Solid 5, give it some enhancements, right? Like add that final mission, add, like I said, that tank that was initially intended to be like like something you could take out into the field and then got scaled back.
Yeah.
Put that in there, and even hey, if you want to use some parts of Survive, if you want to put in like it sounds like the base building stuff is kind of cool. Like, hey,
Right.
expand, make a little base building mode.
Co-op missions, they already basically have zombies in Phantom Pain anyway. Just like use those instead of the glowing head guys.
So yeah, like the fact that, like, to me, I don't understand why you go to all this, like why Konami goes to all this trouble to make this like weird survival game when it can sort of ride the coattails of this already successful project that they can just sort of augment. And I mean, I'd buy it again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, but Joe, what if the inclusion of D-Tay? What if it means, because maybe it is hell, and maybe every Metal Gear boss ever has been sent to D-Tay, and that's how the game ends, is you fight every boss ever, because that is hell in this world. Like
That
a
is
Dragon
fun.
Ball
Yeah.
type
I already
existence.
fought those bosses.
Yeah, but don't you want to fight him in hell? I mean, D-Tay, sorry.
Yeah.
I feel like reaching the end of that game is going to be D-Tay.
I don't know.
I think I'm digging parts of it, and I'm with Joe, and I'm waiting for it to click, and I hope it does, because there's parts of me where it's like, I think I can get into this. I think I'm kind of enjoying my time.
Yeah, I'm sort of there as well. Just like there are parts where I'll go into the dust and come back and like, oh, that was really like I was over encumbered but I made it past all these zombies and I just brought a crap ton of supplies to my guys and I was like, I enjoed the tension there, but it just seems like, all right, now time for half an hour of menus and trying to cook stuff so I can keep playing this game.
Right.
So it feels like it is a game that is like, regardless of whatever the context of Metal Gears or its structures, it just feels like it is still getting in its own way, in a lot of in key ways, I think.
Yeah.
I can echo that there are some like exceptional moments like that in there too. Like the first time I went into the dust. Even though it's like you take 3 steps in there and your new objective is supposed to pop up, I like took a sharp wrong turn right away. Basically, the first time I went to the dust, I got super lost and turned around and was like, had just like slivers of health left. My oxygen was depleting, and I managed to find this little like pocket of safety that like wasn't in the dust.
Yeah.
And then I could open up my map and see where I was, and I was just like super off track. But the sensation of like actually coming back from that outing alive, having all this extra stuff and feeling like you had a narrow scrape with death.
I got away with it.
Yeah. Like
Right.
that's fun on the like rare occasions that everything aligns and like makes that happen.
I will say that narratively there is at least one thread that I'm interested in seeing how it plays out. But other than that, it just feels like every plot point has been, all right, well, now we have this person working here and they're in charge of expeditions. Here's a 5-minute thing on how expeditions will work. Go find us someone who can know expeditions, I guess. And it just seems like it just feels like half of this game is filler. Like,
don't you want to know who Good Luck really is and who he's working for?
I'm interested in seeing more of his. Like the one time you see his model, I think like I was kind of impressed by how his hair looked. I thought that was like, that's kind of impressive.
Good
hair.
luck, good hair. Hell. I'm also hoping they pay off and explain in any more context why there were the Wanderer zombies in Vietnam. Like
they were also part of the Philadelphia experiment at some point.
What the hell's going
sounds
on?
ridiculous.
I mean, no,
You should play it, Elise. You
you would absolutely
I'm
love
really
it. Elise.
sold.
only marginally more ridiculous than other stuff that's been like retcon into Metal Gear's history. But yeah, it does feel crazy.
It turns out there's still a lot of talent that worked on this game. Like it turned out that the absurd Wanderer designs, that's from the old art director for the Silent Hill series. So he was like the creature designer for like Silent Hill 1, 2, and 3, and The Room as well.
Yeah.
I think
That makes a little bit.
it's crazy. And even like the director of this game, like he's been a writer on Metal Gear since Metal Gear Solid 3, apparently. So there is like a cool core team. Like if this team separated and just formed a new indie studio, we'd be excited about that talent and what they were making. So I hate throwing all
I
these
feel like
developers
this really
under the
just
bus.
shouldn't have been a Metal Gear game.
Yeah.
Is the vibe I'm
But the
getting.
sound effects are good, Elise.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is. Yeah,
they play the Peace Walker theme in the beginning. It's badass.
It's
Oh,
also
boy.
they have a surprisingly unsettling throwing up sound effect for when you get sick.
and a farty sound effect as well.
Once again, so sold.
I am super curious to see how this game ends, just because I have no idea like what sort of how this game says, all right, it's over. Like you are. Do you go back to the?
You can't.
Yeah,
You can't, right?
Do you return to Mother Base at some point? It's like, all right, I finished it, or is it just it's like, all right, your base is done. Keep doing the loop.
No, you have to open the wormhole to get back to your home
Right,
dimension.
that's what I'm saying. Like at the end, is that the last mission of just like, all right, we're back in our own world,
But-
we did it.
There it is.
One of the weird things, though, is like right when you start up this game, I don't think I've seen this in a game before. It gives you a roadmap of content releases, like coming up in March, coming
Yeah.
up throughout the summer.
Mhm.
So in theory, they're going to want to keep you in that world, so they
Yeah,
can keep
but it's
trickling
like,
out this
all
stuff.
right, in March we're adding another co-op mission, which
Yeah.
is good because right now there's only 2 that I've seen. But
Yeah.
they also have this weird thing where it's like if you buy the microtransaction currency in Japan, there's like this weird limit where it's like you have like 180 days to spend it.
What?
Otherwise, it goes away. Like I there's like
Like
this weird like
rental
disclaimer of
currency?
like in Japan, it might be tied to some law or something where it's like if you buy this currency, it is limited in some way. Like which is a weird disclaimer to have it up front in your game, but
Let's go with Cuban energy instead. Elden Ring.
Kuban and yeah.
Holy cow. Metal Gear Survive. What a ride, man. I think I'm going to
Okay.
keep playing it.
Yeah,
I'm into it.
I mean, I have to for work, but I think
I love that.
I think I am enjoying it, but I'm way more fascinated by it
Yes.
and compelled to see it
Yes,
just to
yes,
see what
yes.
it is, more than like, all right, this is going to be a good time. I'm going to keep going because I'm having fun.
I'm totally with you, Surreal. Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version and listen to new episodes airing every Thursday. We cover big games on the horizon, games that we've just reviewed. We have long-form developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So check it out every Thursday.